Hello, Jigsaw Universe. With us today to discuss her writing career and the art of the craft is science fiction and fantasy author K.N. Salustro. The creator of both the Star Hunters and Southern Echo series, K.N. has been entertaining readers with her work since 2014. Welcome, K.N., and thank you for joining us today. How are you?
Thanks, Dave. I'm doing really well. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you. And how is the weather where you are today?
It's very nice out today.
Okay.
Finally, not like a sun-destroying heat waves.
Yes, and it's getting that way for me too, down the street in southern Tempe. Yes, absolutely. Understood. Thank you very much for coming this afternoon. And are you ready to begin?
I am ready. Thank you for
Excellent.
having me.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure. Number one, what were at least three people or events that influenced your decision to become an artist and science fiction and fantasy writer?
So my biggest I want to be a writer moment actually happened in like the seventh grade for me. We took these standardized tests that had this thing called picture prompts where they give you a picture and you have to write a story based on it. We did a practice one once, and if the teacher really liked it and you knew you're getting top scores, he would write on your page like, "May I read?" to the class. So we did one where I got this image of like three boys like crossing a bridge in like a jungle setting, and I wrote this story based off of that, and I thought it was kind of exciting. It was about these kids that go for a hike in like the Amazon rainforest, and they get separated from their group, and then they stumble upon this like remote village, and then get chased out of the village and through the forest, and like just when they're about to get caught, they wake up that it was all a dream, which was still kind of a fresh trope at the time. So
Mhm.
I forgive my 13-year-old self for employing that one. But the teacher really liked it, and he read it to the class, and he like performed this thing like you wouldn't believe, like just read it like it was like a brilliant play or something like that, and just put it on. And about halfway through the story, I kind of became aware that everybody in the class was actually kind of sitting on the edge of their seats and like just really riveted on this story. And I was kind of like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. That's cool.
Mhm.
And then it got to like the it was all a dream part, and the class actually let out this like audible sigh of relief. And then at the end, when it was like, oh, maybe it wasn't a dream, people were like, that was really cool. And I actually had two kids come to me in like a next class and be like, I really liked your story. So for me, that was kind of a moment where I was like, yeah, I want to be a writer. But like sci-fi and fantasy in particular, I think I can blame my parents for that, because like they raised me on Star Wars basically. Like my dad especially, he was really important to him that I enjoyed that, I think, because it was a big thing for him.
Okay.
Um, and he says one of his favorite memories is they did like a limited re-release of A New Hope at theaters
Mhm.
when I was like a little kid, and he took me to see that, and he said like I spent the whole time just like on the edge of my seat, just like staring at the screen watching this movie, and I've been kind of a Star Wars fan ever since. And that is what got me into sci-fi. I think is what got a lot of people into sci-fi.
Okay.
I think with fantasy, I just was really like dragons for some reason. I don't have an explanation for that one. I just thought they were cool.
Okay.
So that was my bridge into that, because where else are you going to find dragons but in fantasy?
I understand. I understand. Did you want to acknowledge the teacher that set you in motion?
Yeah, that was Mr. Frashella. That was my middle school English teacher. I had a few influential teachers like throughout school, so shout out to all of them. They were always great.
Is there anything else you'd like to add on what has influenced you in addition to your teachers, your parents, and Star Wars? And uh, I don't think you said an influence on dragons.
Just always liked them.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, I don't have an explanation for that one.
Okay, okay. I take it, if I may, you like Game of Thrones?
I enjoyed it. I liked House of the Dragon more than the Game of Thrones TV shows, but I like the Song of Ice and Fire books a lot.
Okay, very good. Very, very good. Excellent. Excellent. Let's go to number two. Please tell the viewers why you use the initials KN, I'm sorry, KN in your author's name.
So those are my initials for my first and middle name. And when I first published, it was still kind of a time when like female names in the sci-fi community were kind of automatically getting looked down upon. And thankfully that's changed a lot. And there's been a lot of progress forward, and that's been amazing. Um, Actually, I remember the first time I told somebody that I was a sci-fi and fantasy author, the man kind of scoffed and said, "Isn't that a man's genre?" And then kind of tried to dismiss me right after that. And I was like, okay. Yeah, so that was the initial motivation for that. I wanted it to be like a little more gender neutral, but then going on from there, I kind of just like the way the initials sound, so I've just kept them. But yeah, I'm very open. Like, I am a woman. I write sci-fi and fantasy. So if you see like any of my social media posts and everything, it usually says like she, her in the bio and things like that.
Excellent. Excellent. Number 3. What are at least 3, and there could be more, science fiction and fantasy novels, movies, or television cable streaming shows that have influenced your writing and artistic career?
We talked about Star Wars a bit, so that's one of them.
Right.
So that original trilogy that got released.
Mm-hmm.
A big book influence, and give a shout out to another teacher, Mr. Canick from high school, was A Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula Le Guin. That very quickly became like one of my all-time favorite books. And Mr. Canick was the one who gave it to me in middle school when I was high school rather. I was like, I'm writing a book. And he was like, you know what? Your writing kind of reminds me of this author's, which was like a major compliment. Like, I still kind of reel thinking about that. I don't know if it's true or not, but no, it was great. And I read the book, and I don't know, it just really spoke to me as a writer and as a reader too. I thought it was beautiful, and I loved like everything about it. I was like, I want to write like her. So she became one of my sci-fi fantasy heroes.
And is there any others influences that you'd like to discuss?
I think not just as like writing in general. He's not a sci-fi or fantasy author, but I grew up reading like a lot of Wilbur Smith books. And he does a lot of like historical fiction books filled with like action and adventure.
Okay.
And it has a lot more adult content than my parents realized when they were giving me these books for Christmas, like as a middle school.
Okay.
I did not tell them about that.
Okay.
But the writing style was very clear, and I really enjoyed like how he wove action and character development together. And I'm not a huge fan of him these days anymore. Like, just kind of tastes have diverged, and I found other writers that I enjoy more. But growing up, that was a big influence on me, I think, and I think definitely had an impact on how my writing style developed overall.
Okay. Any particular titles of his you want to single out?
So the first book that I read by him that still kind of holds a special place in my heart was called The Eye of the Tiger. I liked that one a lot, and I think that one remains one of my favorites. And then another all-time favorite of mine was Warlock. And that one took place in like ancient Egypt. So that I think every kid had like an ancient Egypt phase in a way.
Right.
Yeah, and that one had a bit more to do with like magic, so there was like a little more fantasy elements in that one too. And that was one of my favorites.
Okay. Excellent. Next question. What was the major inspiration for creating the Star Hunters series?
So to be totally honest, when I was in middle school and started working on it, that was when the new Star Wars trilogy was coming out. Not the most recent one, but you know,
Phantom Menace.
the Phantom Menace, and then the Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. And Attack of the Clones came out when I was in middle school, and I got very upset with that movie because it was like it took the Star Wars that I loved and it kind of turned it into like this big romance love story that I wasn't really into. I mean, like as a 13-year-old angsty kid, you're just like, no, that's gross and I hate it. And like as an adult now, I'm like, there's a lot of like very interesting and nuanced things that they actually kind of did with Anakin as a character. And like his story is like a beautiful tragedy, but no, as a kid, I was like having none of that, so I didn't
Right.
so I started like coming up with a story of my own, and then it kind of evolved into its own thing. And then I wrote what turned out to be the first draft of Chasing Shadows when I was a teenager. And then I grew up, thankfully, did a lot of revising and rewriting on that book. So before it came out, so it was no longer written by a teenager, which isn't to say like it was. No, it was bad when it was a first draft. It was not good.
That's okay. That's okay, Cam. My first book, Jigsaw Beginnings, went through like 30 drafts.
Yeah.
So no, I totally get it. And I understand, about the Star Wars prequels because, Jar Jar, of course, got a lot of, but thanks to Jim Abrams, those prequels now look like classics.
Yeah, in a way.
Yeah.
My favorite like theory about Jar Jar Binks though is that he is like an all-powerful Sith Lord. Like somebody points out like all this stuff about him through the prequel trilogies, and you're like, actually,
I heard that theory, and it's plausible.
It's weirdly plausible. Yeah.
I mean,
Like,
he's so stupid. He had to be planning it with Palpatine. Okay, yeah, I could buy that. And I do agree with you on, I think like especially for Revenge of the Sith, that could probably have been two movies.
yeah.
Because with Anakin, it's like 1 minute he's a hero, and the next minute he's Dark Lord. It's like, really? In less than two
Yeah. It
hours?
was
Okay.
a very quick turnaround. Like
Yeah.
that would have been a great like two movie thing just to see him go through this fall and then this descent into villainhood.
Yeah, I agree. If I may, I know we're digressing a little bit. Have you been watching the Ahsoka series?
I have not, because I don't have Disney Plus, but I was really interested in that because I loved Ahsoka Tano from the Clone Wars
Yeah,
series.
and also she was on Rebels too. Yeah, I would I would recommend it. I don't know if it's going to show up eventually on YouTube because some YouTube and so forth, but I would recommend it. It's well done.
I'll have to see if I can get my sister to share her Disney Plus password with me.
There you go.
Just
There
for
you
that.
go.
Yeah.
Understood. I'm sorry I digress.
I don't know. The
What's that?
recommendations for more content to
Oh,
watch.
oh yeah, and forgive me. It seems, and I was talking to my friend Gary on it. It seems the Star Wars on Disney, like Kenobi, Andor. I haven't seen Mandalorian. Kenobi, and Boba Fett. It seems they're doing what the Jim Abrams sequels could not.
Mm,
They seem to be more down to earth stories. Although Andor specifically is Star Wars for adults, I would not have a child watch that one.
okay.
On that one. But okay, number 5, KN. What was the major inspiration for creating the Southern Echo series?
So another thing that came out when I was in my formative years was the Pirates of the Caribbean, movie trilogy. So that really helped get us into the whole pirate era. And
Okay.
that's one that never really left. So I'm still very into pirates.
Okay.
Yeah, that came out. I think I never really thought about writing a pirate story though until I was an adult. And this is one of the things I just got an image in my head of like what would ultimately become the Southern Echo, just like sailing on the open sea.
Mm-hmm.
And like this crew headed by this captain and a quartermaster. The captain was not a magic user, but she was like very skilled in what she did. And the quartermaster would be a magic user. And then from there, I imagine going on all these different adventures and what they could possibly do on the high seas, and then getting into all sorts of trouble and this overarching idea involving a dragon that I won't say too much about, but
Mm-hmm.
that did form the basic plot for the Roar of the Lost Horizon.
Okay.
And yeah, there's still a lot of elements that play into there.
I understand.
Yeah.
If I may, if give me, Gwen and I one time we went to this. Johnny Depp was at ASU discussing what was supposed to be some sort of thing related to science, but nobody at audience wanted to talk about science. They were just cared about being there for Johnny Depp. Yeah,
Yeah.
on all that. But no, okay, excellent. Number 6. What were the major inspirations for your writing Cause of Death and Tales from 2020?
Cause of Death was another just a random thought popped into my head. I think I was on my way to go see a totally unrelated movie. I don't even remember which one it was. It might have been like a Pixar movie. But I
Okay.
was just walking into the theater. I had this random thought that was like, I wonder what would happen if death showed up to like reap a soul and it was already gone. So then I couldn't get that thought out of my head. I to this day I don't know where it came from. It's just a strange random little thought that came to me, and I was like, you know what, that might make an interesting book. And sat down and played with that for a while, and that became Cause of Death eventually.
Okay.
Yeah, and then as for Tales for 2020, those were just short stories that I wrote during the pandemic, or the height of the pandemic, I'll say. I needed some escapism and just distractions from what's going on in the real world, but I didn't have it in me to sit down and write like a big, huge project. So I just kind of did these little mini stories and then compiled them into the short story collection. Did a couple paintings with them.
Understood. Kind of a 2020 version of the Decameron.
I guess so.
Boccaccio, he wrote a story set during the Black Plague where people would gather for 10 days and they'd tell stories
Oh, yeah, I guess that
on that. But
would have been nice. Yeah.
no, understood. So number 7, please explain the writing process to you personally. Do you start with an outline and then proceed to draft status? Do you brainstorm thoughts first and proceed from there? How many draft revisions do you generally go through before final status? And how often does the final product match what you started off with at the beginning of the writing process? I realize that might depend on which work, but
It does, yeah. I mean, when I was younger, I used to be a like seat of my pants kind of person, just like stuff flying off. Sorry, the dog disappeared for a second.
It's okay.
Yeah. Oh, and there's the cat. Hello, Marina.
Okay.
She might appear. We'll see.
Okay. Not a problem.
A pet interruption is always fun. Right. So when I was first starting out, I was definitely like a fly by the seat of my pants kind of writer, and I just didn't really have a thing going on. The first draft of Chasing Shadows was just kind of a spontaneous thing, and I just wrote wherever I felt like it should have gone. Since then, I have very much become a fan of outlines. So I'll do like an initial brainstorming thing just in terms of maybe characters, some basic plot, and then I go into an outline and I want to try to get like as much detail as I can. There's always room for deviation and like surprises, because sometimes the character is like, you know what, it makes more sense for me to act this way when you're writing a book. And you're like, you know what, it does. And then that changes a bunch of things. I think ultimately it still stays pretty close to what I have in the outline in terms of plot. Characters definitely always give you the biggest surprises, and their motives for things like become clearer as you go through like drafts or even just get through the first draft. By the time the outline's done, I know how the book like should go from beginning to end. And I think that's kind of the main thing that I try to stick to. I think it's important to know like how you want to start and how you want to finish. And like even if you don't have all the details for the middle filled out, you can kind of connect threads back together and figure out how things go.
Excellent. Anything you want to add to that before we go on to the next question?
Yeah, I'll also say that sometimes I take a bunch of post-it notes and like I have so many different colors of them and they just fill up a wall. It kind of looks like a true crime series or something like that, where you enter like the crazy person serial killer's lair and there's just like these notes and strings and everything. Just detective's like, what does it mean? That's what my wall sometimes looks like.
It's okay. My line editor is the same way. You know, all that. No, I totally get it. I totally get it. So based on that, next question, what was the easiest work for you to write? Please explain.
It's always an interesting question because like no book is ever easy, but I mean, comparatively speaking, I think the first ever draft of Chasing Shadows was the easiest then, because I didn't care and was just putting words on a page for the sake of doing it. And I kind of just flew through that. Yeah, everything kind of has its own kind of challenge. In a way. I mean, there are always going to be parts of books that are easier to write and parts that are harder. Yeah, I'll just stick with that original answer. The very first draft, Chasing Shadows, was the easiest to write, and then the rewrite was harder, but it was still kind of fun, like being like, how much of this original thing can I keep, and do I want to keep? And then how do you build it up from there?
Okay, no, I understand. No, I writing is very stimulating. I get it.
Yeah.
The next question, the total opposite. What has been the most challenging writing project you've had?
Probably my current one, actually, which is the sequel to Roar. That's called A Whisper from the Edge of the World. And the reason why that's been hard has been on like the personal front. Like I've just had a lot of things going on in my life that kind of disrupted everything. And it seemed to like just be happening consistently throughout the past year. But even like from a creative standpoint too, it's hard to write a sequel to a book like Roar just because it needed to feel similar without feeling like the same thing. So Whisper is an interesting book. It gets darker, it goes deeper into some things, and it does kind of set something up that will occur later in the series. It is like the sequel to the very beginning of like the whole adventure. Yeah, it's just a challenge to follow that and try to like bring in new things without retreading too much of old things. And
no, I
hard to explain.
No, it's cool. It's cool. What can you say has been your proudest achievement in writing during your career?
I think just whenever I get to put a book out, like it's always like a really proud moment. I've gotten a couple of awards for different books. Cause of Death won a silver medal in the Global Ebook Awards one year, and then it won the fantasy category in the Indie Reader Discovery Awards, Discovering Indie Reader Award. I always mix up the order of that name, and I always feel really bad about it. But that was very cool. I was very proud of the book for that. I still think like that the proudest moment is still like when you get the first like proof copy in your hands. You know what that's like. You're just
Yes,
like,
I do.
It's here. It's finally here.
Yeah, when my first book went out, it's like I'm a published writer, and it's like somebody actually bought it.
Yeah, nothing beats that feeling. Like
oh yeah, and the person that bought it wasn't a family member or a friend.
your first sale to like a person you don't know is huge.
Yes.
is amazing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Number 11. What can you say has been your most heartbreaking writing experience? Please explain.
This was like the hard question for me because it's like,
Okay.
I don't know, I haven't really had like a heartbreaking experience while writing a book. I
Okay.
guess I'm one of those people who like when my writing comes more from a place of joy, even if I'm writing something like very emotional and sad, it's still because like I enjoy what I'm writing and what I want to be doing. So I haven't really had like a project break my heart, I guess. I mean, I know a heartbreaking moment I think for everybody is when somebody gives you like a 2 or a 1 star rating on Goodreads. But if they don't leave a review, you're like, I don't know what you didn't like about the book. So
Mhm.
okay. So the first time that happened, like I remember like being pretty upset, but then I just like ate some chocolate and moved on with my life, and that's all you can really do.
Yeah, I understand the value of chocolate.
Yeah, it's quite wonderful.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, and I do also I think I'm also on Goodreads too, and the experience you just outlined just happened to me recently. Someone left, I forgot which book. I think it's probably beginnings a 2 star, and it's like, well, and nothing, no comments. Like, well,
Yeah.
and I emailed the person and said, well, tell me what you didn't like. Tell me what you liked. No reply.
Yeah. It's like you can't, follow up with that stuff. You just gotta let it go. And it's like Goodreads is for readers, and it's just opinions. And that's
Right.
okay. Not everybody is gonna like your book. And that's
Well,
also okay.
yeah,
Like that's how it makes us human. But it's if you are a reader and you're gonna leave like a 2 or a 1 star review, say something about why you didn't like it and try
right,
to make it like constructive so somebody else could be like, oh, I actually really like that about a book when I'm reading it. So
right.
then you can actually find the right audience. Like make it helpful.
No, I agree. You're totally right there. Absolutely. What are the names of future projects you are working on or considering? When will they be published?
Yes, so the current one is A Whisper from the Edge of the World. That should be published in October. That's the one that the editor has right now. And
October next month or October 2024?
October next month.
Okay, cool.
Oh, you're right. We said this might come out in November, so retroactive publish.
Okay, okay,
Sorry, yeah, October of 2023. That's my goal.
okay.
Hopefully it doesn't push into November, but if it does, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. And then after that, the rest of the Southern Echo series. So I've got book 3 that's going to be called A Silence Falling Dark and Deep,
Mhm.
and then book 4, which will be called The Shattering of the Frozen North. I don't have titles for the other ones yet, but I'm enjoying these long titles for these books for
Mhm.
this particular series.
Excellent. And is there any non-series related works independent of the series that you'll be working on, or just focused on these right now?
I have a sci-fi duology that I would like to work on, but right now I'm focused on the Southern Echo series.
Okay.
But I'll probably start working on that one, I don't know, soon-ish maybe. I try to focus on just like one project at a time just for the sake of keeping my thoughts coherent.
Mhm.
Because I've seen what they look like when they're out on the wall and they're a mess. So try not to confuse myself too much.
Okay. Understood. Understood. Last question. What advice would you give beginning writers who are starting to work on their craft career? How important is it to them to consider a cover artist, an editor, and beta readers, and a marketing strategy? Please explain.
So my favorite advice remains like you can always edit a bad book, but you cannot edit a blank page. So you need to write the thing. If you do not write the thing, you cannot do anything. The other piece of advice that I really like that I've heard is that finished is better than perfect.
Mhm.
It's like nothing is ever going to be perfect. You can only make something the best that you can with your current ability. As writers, one of the great things about our profession is that you're always going to be like evolving and improving in a lot of ways too, which I find fascinating and I always look forward to. It's like you'll read something or you'll write something or you'll learn something and you'll just be like, oh, okay. And something will click in your mind and then that'll suddenly inform your process going forward.
Mhm.
Like the books I write today are not at all like what I wrote when I first started publishing. And that's okay. I'm proud of the growth that I've had, and I'm still proud of the first books that I've put out. But if I'd waited for them to be perfect, like I never would have published anything.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I've had to accept like your current limitations, whatever they are. You should still try to make something as best as you can make it, but don't get caught up in this endless cycle of like this is not good enough. Like I'm not good enough. You need to have that confidence in yourself and be able to say like I've made this the best that I can at this point in time, and I'm going to put this out now.
Okay. And
Um,
oh, please continue. I'm sorry.
yeah, you mentioned the cover artists
The,
and things like that.
yeah, the
I'd
editor.
say a cover artist is definitely important. Like everybody always says, don't judge a book by its cover, but that's exactly how we judge books.
Mhm.
They tell us what genre it is. They tell us, are we going to be interested in it? And they're going to tell us like it might appeal to us or not, even before we crack it open and look at how the writing is. So a cover is important. And it's important to get somebody who understands like cover art design and, what trends are going on in publishing now and things like that. The really, really, really good ones are going to be expensive. You can probably find someone who will do something else. Like I know my first books, I just paid for the image, not like any of the formatting of the cover or anything like that. So that I handled myself. I learned how to do that and then put the title and everything on there. But the image I worked with an artist, and he came up with the idea for like the Chasing Shadows cover and everything like that. Gave some feedback and critique, and we just went back and forth a little bit and tweaked it until I felt it was right. But yeah, working with like a professional cover designer is really interesting too, because like the cover for Roar, like I honestly had no idea what I wanted for that one, and I ended up really loving what the cover designer came up with. If you look at that book, it looks like it belongs like in the industry, I guess I'll say. Like you did really well with like the Jigsaw series. Like those books look like they belong in the industry. They tell you what they are, what they're about, and they look beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's exciting to get that for the Roar of the Lost Horizon. And then we got the cover for Whisper from the Edge of the World. And having that open on the computer has also been a big inspiration to just write the damn book. You got the cover. And then as far as like editors go, I found an editor to be really helpful. There's always going to be things about your own work that you're not going to catch because you're so far into it that you can't see it. Like it's almost like not seeing the forest for the trees. So having an outside set of eyes is kind of invaluable. I would say like finding a professional editor is going to be a really good step for anybody. You obviously want to kind of vet them and make sure that they can work well with you and their editing style jives with yours. So most editors, they will like edit like a small sample of your work before you actually like enter into a contract with them. And you can see like, is our style jiving? Is this all working out? You can kind of see that way, is this the person I want to work with? I know a lot of people say like don't go to like friends and family, but if you have like a friend or family member that you do trust to give you honest, constructive feedback, I don't think there's a lot of harm in that. The key is like the honest, constructive feedback. You don't want someone who's just gonna like tell you like you did so many things terribly in this and then like nothing positive. And vice versa, you don't want somebody who's just gonna be like, wow, this was amazing and I loved every second of it. You're either lying or you're not the right person that I should be talking to right now.
No, I totally understand.
Yeah. But yeah, if you can get more towards a professional, like they will have a more unbiased view towards things, and they'll ask you questions about things that you didn't consider. They'll help you see things that are like I know for the Southern Echo books, working with my editor has been really great because she'll ask some questions and I'll be like, you know what? I didn't think about that because as the author, I know exactly what this character's motive is and like what the legend behind like the treasure that they're seeking is, but the readers have no idea. So they need some clarification over in these spots and a little more information revealed over here before we actually go off on the journey.
Okay. And did you want to comment on marketing strategy for aspiring writers?
Yeah. I know when I started out, I did not have a marketing strategy. So that's like a big no-no. If you can get a marketing strategy going, do it. It's very important. You're not likely to see a lot of sales otherwise. Even with a marketing strategy, it's still going to be tough to get sales, especially if you're just starting out. And that's okay. It takes time to build something and gather momentum with it, and keep things going. And the bigger your backlist is,
Your
better chance
catalog.
of somebody finding your stuff. Yeah.
No, I understand. Is there anything else you would like to add, KN?
I feel like that's about it, but I feel like I'm forgetting something too, so I don't know. Do you have a follow-up question on anything, or you want to talk about Star Wars some more?
Yeah, we could talk. We could talk about Star Wars a little bit more. So but let's talk about the other Star Trek. Do you get? No, I'm. I was raised more on Star Trek. Star Wars came out when I was 10, so or 11, and I love Star Wars, but I always thought Star Trek had the more three-dimensional characters.
Yeah, I definitely gotten that vibe. It's funny, like I have not seen nearly as much Star Trek as I should have. It's at the point now where it's like it's so big that it's a little intimidating to get into, which is like the case with a lot of things at this point. I was raised on Star Wars because that was a little more accessible. I think like it was just 3 movies in the beginning, and that was easy to show a kid as opposed to like a full TV series. And this was
Right.
before like the age of DVDs when things were coming and you could binge watch something on Netflix.
Right.
Still hit that point. But yeah, I get that vibe a lot. And like there's a fun theory that some of my friends would talk about, which is that Star Wars is actually like a trashy novel series set in the Star Trek universe.
Mhm.
It's like somewhere in Star Trek there is a character just reading the Star Wars novels.
Well, I had to email you and another friend of mine. There's this cartoon where they both series poke fun at each other. You have Jean-Luc Picard making fun of Darth Vader. I got to look that up, and I'll send it to you, and get a good laugh out of it. And Darth Vader's like going, Starfleet sucks, and yeah, and it's like, yeah, you made your mythology based on metachlorians and and all this. But yeah, I gotta send it. I think you'll get a laugh out of that. Uh, Getting back to the questions before we conclude the recording, is there anything else you wanted to say about your career? Any other advice you'd like to give aspiring writers, or anything that maybe we left out? And or is there anything I didn't ask that you would like to let the viewer know?
Don't know because there's it's one of those things too, where like we're gonna hang up and I'm gonna be like, oh, we should have talked about this. But that's okay. Yeah, it's hard. I'm glad you set those questions ahead of time. So it is hard coming up with an answer on the spot.
No, no, it's okay. It's okay. So who would you like to introduce us to at the end of the interview here?
This is Marina. She's my writing and editing partner, apparently very camera shy.
Oh, okay. Is she a muse of yours?
Not so much, but she definitely likes to stare at me and let me know, like, you're not working on the thing you said you're going to work on today. So you should be petting me instead.
Okay. My
Just kidding.
our dog is that way too. Okay. And so Kayan, thank you very much for spending some time with us today, and it was an enjoyable experience, and I hope you enjoyed it as well.
I did. Thank you. It was very fun.